Welcome to the Indeed Knowledge Series video interviews with Norbert Leonhardmair. Norbert, welcome.
Thank you.
Now, Norbert, you work with the organization VICESSE, which is one of the partners in the Indeed project. Can you tell us a little bit about VICESSE and the work that you do?
Sure. We are a Vienna-based social science research organization. We are non-profit and been engaged in the last 10 years in predominantly European projects, but also do national and local initiatives, working on a variety of security issues ranging from domestic violence, human trafficking, de-radicalization, corruption, and more in the field of security research, also on the intersection of security and technology, and all the subsequent implications, ethical implications as they come, and now with emerging AI technologies.
Very interesting. The Indeed project, which we're part of, has been pioneering and innovative in many ways. And one of those has been its intensive focus on GELSA, which is what you and the team at VICESSE have been leading and bringing into the project throughout. Can you tell us a little bit, what is GELSA, what does that acronym stand for, and what does it mean in the field of PCVE and de-radicalization?
Right, so the way we conceptualized it was to, in short, GELSA stands for Gender, Ethical, Legal and Societal Aspects of De-radicalization Work and Evaluation. And it's derived essentially from the UN's human rights-based approach. They suggest for all projects, initiatives, programs to start essentially with a human rights perspective. We have taken this for the PVCE field and spelled it out into GELSA, taking the sort of the normative framework of the Fundamental Rights Charter, but also introducing a very strong empirical lens into this, meaning what do these aspects mean for practitioners in the field, what are they struggling with, how do they connect with these topics in the pursuit of their daily activities.
And what needs did you identify with practitioners?
Right, so at the onset of the project, we first launched, we broke down GELSA essentially in a number of variables to get not an in-depth analysis, but a rough overview to point us in the right direction where the most pressing needs might be identified. For gender aspects, that is, of course, that initiatives or the evaluation that we are engaged in based is essentially on the understanding, of course, of the equal rights and dignity of all genders. But on the other hand, at the same time, to make sure initiatives do devise their strategies in a gender-specific way, that they acknowledge the gender specificity of radicalization processes. It's not the same for young boys and girls, women and men. And that has been one of the pretty strong feedback from practitioners that we did in surveys, in focus groups, that there is a lack of guidance through the organizations and understanding, something we have seen in the just a review of the research literature beforehand.
Indeed, one of the major outcomes of the project, or results of the project, has been the creation of the Indeed evidence-based evaluation model and the evidence-based evaluation tool. And in the tool and all of its 4 stages of preparation, design, execution, and utilization, you see the GELSA lens and the GELSA framework built in at every step along the way. And within that, gender is focused on very significantly, which is something unique, taking this further into application in the field. Why is it so important for evaluators who are looking at PCVE and de-radicalization initiatives, and also for practitioners working in the field, to integrate gender into every aspect of their approach?
So yeah, this was a choice we made really at the start of the proposal writing, not to have gender as one aspect or only one aspect in the whole prevention of any form of discrimination, that being based on race or ethnicity, sexual orientation, religion, and the list goes on. First of all, we saw, and that's been identified by multiple practitioners and practitioner networks already, that there has been a lack of strategies specifically targeting women, girls, since the de-radicalization work has been so much focused on young men traditionally and also justifiably. So there was a gap identified already before we started even Indeed. On the other hand, the feedback from practitioners, from the workers in the field, again assured us of this decision to select for this more and prioritize this more, as all these ideologies, whether that's for men offering an alternative version of masculinity they might not be able to fulfill in normal society or everyday society, and to also account for the intersection of radicalization and sexism as it's predominant across almost all ideologies. Historical, that's for right-wing extremism, that's for religious extremism, but also looking at newer developments in the online world, in the field of conspiracy theories, of incels, for example. So that's why the gender aspect has been so at the forefront of the Indeed approach.
A critical area for practitioners, evaluators, and organizations to be engaging with. In the GELSA materials that you've developed in the project, you also put a lot of focus and attention on engaging with vulnerable groups and the importance of thinking through our approaches, whether it's in designing evidence-based initiatives or in working to implement evidence-based evaluation. Can you speak to us a bit about the attention that needs to be given to engagement with vulnerable groups and why that's so important for the field?
Yes, this connects to a larger point that's also been identified by the feedback of the practitioners, that in their again guidance of their work, and there has been a lack of focus on the involvement of communities at large, also considering unintended consequences on the communities of their initiatives. That's been actually the biggest difference between speaking to practitioners and looking at the programs themselves. The programs talk a lot about the benefit for society and communities, but there seems to be a quite gap between policy and practice. And specifically within that is, of course, to consider vulnerabilities. This is something research has been, of course, considering in a long time. If we do engage people who have been victimized, victims of violence, experienced trauma, but also vulnerabilities in the sense of being at risk of radicalization, which usually includes forms of deprivation, be that socioeconomic or in other forms. So to consider vulnerabilities in the work of course, PVCE, but also in the initiatives and the evaluation of the initiatives. Here, I think it's important to distinguish categorical vulnerability and contextual vulnerability. Categorical vulnerability being, of course, especially protected groups, children, people with mental disabilities, who a priori fall under a category that needs to be considered specifically. Contextual vulnerability, so any form of vulnerability that might be the case due to our experiences in our life, to trauma we experienced or deprivations we experienced. These are important to consider, but it's also important not to assume them a priori. So not to treat people as a vulnerable group or as a representative or vulnerable individual from the start. People still have agency. That's also something that can even disencourage researchers or evaluators to engage head-on with people targeted or addressed by initiatives. because there's certain hesitations how to approach this, how to do it safely and securely, and to give room to really analyze whether there is a existing vulnerability that needs to be addressed, but to leave the agency in the decision-making, how the participation should occur, when to withdraw, how to negotiate this with the participant. So I think that's an important lesson to be taken.
Absolutely. Norbert, thank you so much both for sharing with us a bit this morning about the work of GELSA within the Indeed project and everything that you and the team at VICESSE have done to bring this forward within Indeed. For those who are interested in learning more about GELSA, the gender, ethical, legal, and social aspects of designing evidence-based initiatives within the field of preventing and countering violent extremism and radicalization, and in looking at how to design evidence-based evaluation, you can go to the Indeed website. You'll find a wealth of resources and materials that have been put together by Norbert and his team. You'll also find that GELSA is integrated throughout in the e-guidebooks, in the evidence-based evaluation model and tool, and sections on the site with dedicated resources where you can learn more about the field. Thank you for joining us for another one of our videos in the Indeed Knowledge Series, video interviews with practitioners and experts working in the field.